Welcome, everybody, to Back to the Retro Review. I'm your host, Kevin, the Bearded Geek. We have Mikey the Freak, and we have Bebo. And we are recording. Yes. Oh, guys, I started recording. We got 30 minutes into this and realized that I forgot to hit the record button, so we're starting all over. We are recording Major League. This is Major League the movie. This came out in 1989. It is springtime, baseball season. Got to do Major League. The synopsis from IMDb states, the new owner of the Cleveland Indians puts together a purposely horrible team so they'll lose and she can move the team. But when the plot is uncovered, they start winning. Just a spider.
Yeah, they keep that pretty basic.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than IMDb should than puts. You know what I mean? So you go into the movie. They win to the spider because they wanted to go. She wanted to go to Miami. She wanted palm trees and the life of luxury and sipping on Mai Tais. And the city of Cleveland was horrific at that point.
Yeah,
so they wanted to she wanted to move them down to Miami to become a little bit more posh, I guess you could say.
And if she could keep the attendance for the stadium under a certain amount, she could move. She could the contract that they have with the city was null and void, and that she could move the team. That's basically the bigger story plot. But there's also a sub story with Jake Taylor, who's the catcher. He's an older, seasoned veteran, and he has a love interest who was currently involved with another man, basically. So he's
and
trying
the love interest was his ex-fiance from back when he was in like the Cleveland area before.
Correct.
Yeah. It's a huge story behind her with being an Olympic swimmer, and he really didn't know that, and he wanted to rekindle that love because they used to have something back in the day when they were both very athletic. And now that he got washed up and bad knees and went down to the Mexican League, they brought him back to Cleveland. And what was funny is her boyfriend was like, I didn't even know Cleveland had a team still. Right. So that's how bad the Indians were at that point, where, she's like, yeah, we got uniforms and everything. So it's kind of funny that how bad the Indians were at that point and how they had to build their way up from worst, well, I'd say not even having a team, basically, to trying to win just to spite Rachel Phelps, the owner.
Correct. Brian, you want to tell us pretty much about the main characters, who they were, and stuff like that?
So the main characters you pretty much have is you have, like we said, Jake, who's the catcher. He's past his prime. Bad knees, still feels like he can play ball, but probably shouldn't be in the game anymore.
Right. This was his last chance.
And then you have him coming in. You have Ricky Vaughn, also known as Wild Thing later on in the movie. Kind of a badass biker dude. When we first meet him, they're offering him to come play with the Indians, and they want him to come to spring training in I think it was April or something like that. And he's like, I don't know if I'll be able to make it by then. And you realize he's talking on a payphone in a jail somewhere. But he's like the powerhouse, 96 mile an hour fastball. But he, of course, has control issues. Always throws it, and later on you realize it's a vision thing. He ends up getting glasses. You've got Willie Mays Hayes, runs like Mays, hits like Hayes, and that was played by Wesley Snipes back then. One of the first roles I think I saw him in.
Although he may run like Hayes, but he hits like shit.
It's like shit, yeah. Because every time he'd go to bat, he'd pop that ball straight up in the air, and eventually the Lou, who was the head coach, is like, every time that ball goes up in the air, you owe me 20 push-ups. Mm-hmm. And so you'd see him in the middle of a spring training game, pop that ball up and just go shit and get right down over home plate and start, 1, 2. But one of my favorite players is Pedro Serrano, who is played by the All-State guy. And he comes in. He's from Cuba. He's into voodoo, which just added all kinds of hilarity into this movie with him, trying to pray that he's not cut from the team, and he's sitting there with snakes doing crosses on his locker door. And then you have Roger Dorn, who is kind of more along the lines of the uppity player, thinks he's better than everybody, but doesn't want to put forth any effort. Looks at this as his money maker at this point. And, I've got futures. I'm not taking one of these balls in the eye, and stuff like that. So it just makes for a really good cast. And then they have bit players throughout the movie, like Harris, who's the older pitcher on the team.
The veteran.
One of the first things you kind of see with him interacting is with Vaughn when he's taking off his shirt and he's got all these different gels and stuff all over him. And he's like, "What is that shit on your chest?" He goes, "Oh, that Vicks Vapor Rub. Down here's Vagisil." And he's got shit all over. He goes, "Of course, if the umps are watching me closely, I just rub a little jalapeno on my nose and wipe my nose." And Vaughn's sitting there like, "You put snot on the ball?" It's like, "Well, I don't have an arm like yours. I got to use any leverage I can get."
Right.
Yep.
And
then you have Lou, who is I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was about to say he's a former tire salesman who's now the head coach. Those are pretty much the main bit players that we have in this movie. But man, you're right. Some of the best moments in this whole thing are in spring training. One of my favorite scenes is when Pedro Serrano does his thing with the snake, hoping he don't get cut. And the very next scene is Willie Mays Hayes. He has this little bitty garden snake that he does the same thing with. And he takes it. It's so funny. What was one of your favorite scenes?
He does
Mike?
a little cross, and then he kisses the snake and realizes that he kisses the snake. And it's like...
What was one of your favorite scenes? Freak.
So a lot of the times when we went down to it, especially with Willie Mays Hayes, the comedic part of it, he was always funny. But I think the best scene with him was when he wasn't invited to camp. He came up in his little Volkswagen Bug and has his introduction. They're like, who the hell is this guy, right? So he does his train out. They take him out. So he's asleep. They undo his bunk bed. They put him outside. He's waking up to gunshots with them doing the sprints. They're doing like 40 or 60-yard sprints. And 2 guys start, and he just hauls ass and passes them.
Yeah.
So the funny thing with that was, it's, with not being able to be invited to camp, you can still run faster than the 2 white guys that are there. But yeah, so they're like, yeah, get this guy a uniform. So even not being invited to camp, you can still make the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah,
that's what was kind of funny on that.
I like when he wakes up and he's like, shit, I've been cut already.
And that was the first day. It didn't even started spring training.
Oh.
My favorite thing about his car, though, is, yes, it was an older school Bug that he's driving, but he had it decked out to look like a Rolls Royce in the front.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yes.
Really cool, really cool. So basically, they go through spring training, and they're losing, and then they start picking up. They start getting better and better. And Rachel Phelps is not having any of this. She's like, no. We need to figure out ways to, discourage them. So she starts taking away their plane, gives them this really run-down, crappy-looking plane to where the propellers are broke, so they're fixing it with freaking duct tape.
Duct tape, yes.
It takes away their...
Yeah, 747 out of... No.
No, there's your plane right there. takes away their whirlpool, gives them like a boat motor. they J rig a boat motor for a freaking whirlpool, freaking redneck ingenuity. Good movie. And then
she tried to make it as worse conditions as possible, so they would continue to lose because they were starting to win too much. So right. They can't allow that.
Well, then they find out that was her plan all along. So Lou, the head coach, he brings in this big cardboard cutout of her, saying that, you know, with the word bubble saying "you guys suck" or "you guys stink" or something like that. And
you guys stink.
Yeah, each time they win, they get to peel a piece of her outfit off until she's butt-ass naked except for little tassels. That's their motivation. They want to. Apparently, they want to see the owner naked.
Yeah, and finding out about that is what was like the common ground that really pulled the team together and got them to really start winning.
Yep, great motivational speech by Jake Taylor. You know, there's only one thing we should do: win the whole fucking thing. Yes, man.
Yes, man.
Pedro Serrano. Roger Dorn comes in spring training with the golf clubs, and Pedro Serrano just steals one of his golf. What do they call golf club koozies?
Golf covers, yeah. Head covers.
He goes, "Oh, hats for bats. Gracias.
Keep bats warm."
Gracias. He just walks away. Basically,
no,
just
hey, buddy, you can't take that.
No.
He's like, "Hey, buddy, you can't take that," and he just turns around, gives him that like look, and he goes, "Enjoy." And then sits there and waits till he walks away, grabs his bag, and brings it around the bed.
Yep. Oh, so they go through, and what happens next, Mike?
So they end up starting to win a lot more. They become division titles, but what happens through the wins is they have to have, you know, they have the motivational cardboard cutout. Lou has a heart attack, so that gives them motivational, and that's where the speech comes from with Jake Taylor. So it comes down to where no,
that's the second one.
No. Damn it, man!
How many?
The second movie.
Did you watch it? Did you watch these movies back to back or something? I mean, geez, you getting them confused.
I don't know. They look between 1 and 2, they run on so well to where you don't know what's what. So I guess with 2, their motivational is him having a heart attack, and then motivation with 1 is Rachel Phelps being butt naked. So that's the motivational between the 2 movies.
And,
so I guess they
in
still
Mikey's
have to
defense,
have something.
This is 30-something years old.
This is true.
So
this movie did come out in 1989.
Stuff does tend to run together.
1989, yeah.
Exactly.
So, but no, what happened is when they start winning, you know, they're getting better and better. The thing I liked about this movie is you had the main plot for like the team and what was going on, but like the individual kind of things that were happening to each player. You know, Pedro, it was him not being able to hit curveballs and praying to Jobu, who was like the hoodoo god or whatever that he was praying to, trying to get him to hit the curveballs. Because what did he say about those? The bats were afraid or something.
Yes.
Bats afraid of curveballs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then with Dorn, it was him, you know, and Jake is the one that kind of turned Dorn around, because Dorn kind of should have had a ball that kind of got grounded by him, and he just kind of let it by. He tanked it, and he tanked it on purpose because he didn't want to get hurt. And after the game, the catcher Jake went to his house and was like, "If you ever tank another thing on purpose, I will cut your fucking balls off and shove them down your fucking throat." And then he leaves.
Jay just walks off. Yeah. Oh, and let's not forget.
And then he sleeps with his wife.
No. Wild Things ends up sleeping with Dorn's wife.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, Wild Things is the one that sleeps with him.
I had no idea.
Yeah, he had no
his
idea.
Wife. It's when they're having an away game. His wife ends up watching the news and sees Roger Dorn with some,
Bimbo.
lady
Groupie.
from that town or whatever, some groupie, and he's nuzzling her neck and stuff and leaves with her. And to get back at him, she goes and finds Vaughn and ends up sleeping with Rick Vaughn. And what I love is she leaves after telling him who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And she's leaving, and apparently he's rooming with Jake, and she goes, "Bye, Jake," and walks out. And Jake comes over to Rick Vaughn's room, and Rick's like this and looks up and goes, "I had no idea who she was, I swear to God."
That was a good scene.
Oh, it was a good scene. And this movie is very quotable. I'm gonna talk about quotes for a minute because I quote this movie almost every year. Even the announcers on Major League Baseball quote this movie. Just a bit outside, tried the corner and missed. Too high, no, too hard. Stuff like that. But my favorite, my favorite quote in the whole movie is a specific scene. It's when Jake Taylor's out on the field all by himself. And, he's pretending he hits a home run. He's running around the bases and he crosses home plate. He gives a fake high five. He's thinking he's all alone, but then you have Willie Mays Hayes and Wild Thing sitting there. Ooh, man.
What is that? A slider?
Slider? Oh, man, that thing was out of here.
I was out of here.
That's my favorite quote. Mikey, what was your favorite quote?
Yeah, I go back to the rookie hazing scene between Ricky Vaughn and Roger Dorn, where he puts the red tag. He puts the red tag in his locker. So he comes in and throws the baseball, and gets pissed off at Lou. Because someday I'm gonna pitch against you, and I'm gonna stick it up your fucking ass. So then he's like, "Oh no! I don't know. Somebody's been hazing you, but we didn't cut you." So he knew exactly who it was. Went tackled tackled Roger Dorn, and says, "Oh, what's the matter, rookie fuckwad? Can't you take a little joke? Yeah, real fucking funny, asshole." So that was always a good little scene between Rick Vaughn and Roger Dorn.
How about you, Bebo? What was your favorite quote?
Mine would be Harris, who is another player on the team, the older pitcher, where he doesn't like the fact that Serrano is practicing voodoo because he's a Christian, supposedly. And he comes out and there's this little shot glass full of rum for Jobu as an offering. And he looks around, nobody's there. He says, "Up your butt, Jobu," and takes the shot. Leaves, goes outside, walks up the steps and comes out onto the field and says, "Hey, bartender, Jobu needs a refill." And then the bat from the dude who's doing the bat practice right now loses the bat. It comes flying and just knocks him in the back of the head. The next scene you see is him sitting in the dugout with a big ice pack on the back of his head, just sitting there like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But another thing I liked about Harris throughout the movie is he kept giving him crap about, being, not being,
Christian.
a Christian and stuff like that. But my favorite scene about that is when they're on the plane that kind of got degraded, or downgraded. They're flying on it. There's this big, electric storm going on. And Pedro's sitting there and goes like that. And Harris leans over, looks at him and says, "Oh, sure, now you believe." He's not fooled. And he's saying this while he's reading a Hustler magazine.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, it's that type of movie.
Well, everything starts coming together too, because at the end of the movie, Harris starts pitching with Jobu on the mound in the warm-up area. If you notice, Jobu's right next to him and he's pitching. So it's a cool little scene. Makes it feel like the whole team finally came together at the end of the movie. So it all boils down to the White Sox and the Indians the Yankees and the Indians have a one-game playoff to go into the wild card, because they're apparently this is in '89. Things are a lot different now with the playoff scenarios, but back then they would have like a one-game playoff, and because their records were tied or something like that, and whoever won got to go to the playoffs. Sorry. So they had the game. They end up winning. You know, Jake sees Lynn in the stands. She takes her ring off, saying that, you know, she's not engaged to that one guy anymore. You have your big 1980s ending. Everybody's happy. Yay. Good movie. I mean, that's basically the synopsis of the story. I mean, it's a freaking... It came out in 89. If you haven't seen this movie by now, you probably won't see it. But anybody who has seen it and is watching this review knows exactly what we're talking about. Great movie. All right, let's talk about sequels. Apparently, Mikey watched the second one back to back. So there was actually a 2. There was actually a Major League 2 and then a Major League 3 back to the minors. And I think there was another one. I think there was another one after that, but I'm not quite sure. 2 was okay. After that, you know, just stop. Just stop. If you don't have the budget for it, just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. I mean, think about it. It was. There was 2. There was Major League 1, Major League 2, which is named just Major League 2, and then Major League 3 technically was back to the minors. So it has nothing to do with Major League 2 at all to me. Corbin Burnson is in it. He actually plays like the owner of this minor league team. So it has somewhat of a premise to Major League, but if you see 1, you could see Major League 2, and what I like more of like Major League 2 is they bring in Tanaka, which from Japanese baseball, so they kind of introduce the different leagues. So when they introduce that Japanese player in, I think he made the whole entire movie very funny, and his interaction with Pedro Serrano and Serrano's different religion that he went to in Major League 2 because he didn't want to hurt a fly or hurt a bird. Bird. So I think so you can watch the second one and still be somewhat entertained because they kind of continue that storyline of bad boy Ricky Vaughn and how he's turned very good and then now preppy. He wants to be bad again.
Yeah, he turned preppy and very businessy.
Yeah. He turned into a Roger Dorn, and that's about where he basically wanted to be. So you could watch the second one, but if you missed out on the Back to the Minors, you're fine with it. Yeah, they really should not have made a Back to the Minors, but they shouldn't have made Major League 2. They could have stopped at Major League 1 and been completely fine with it. Yeah, they could have ended it there.
I would have been fine with that too.
Yeah.
Now let me ask this: should or could it be remade today?
I definitely think that it could be remade today, but there's not a doubt in my mind that it should not be made again, or reboot, remake, whatever you want to do. But I think it's kind of past its day to try and do like a reboot now, especially 30 years later.
Right.
You know,
and it's hard to do a good sports movie. There's only a handful of good sports movies out there, especially ones that are going into the comedic realm. You get some that are okay, but I mean, a really good one, in my opinion, a really good sports movie, it's hard to do because you're not.
Yeah.
You just have to have a budget for it, I guess. You can't just make it anything.
To me, I don't think when you do a sports movie nowadays, it a lot of times has nothing to do with the sports. It's the backstory from that character. It's just that character just plays sports and they're a pitcher for a team or they're a linebacker on a football team. But it's what they do behind the scenes in the movie than just the actual team itself.
That's a good point.
So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Because in watching this movie, Major League, you not only get a connection with the characters, but you feel connected to the team. You start rooting for the team to win instead of just rooting for, the main character or anything like that. You start rooting for that team to win in this movie. So
yeah, it's very rare, especially nowadays, that I would say almost non-existent nowadays, to find just a sports movie in general where it's about the game as opposed to it's about this person who plays the game, like Mikey said. Yeah. Even if you look at things that are still somewhat old now, like Rudy, Invincible, things like that, even though they're football movies, but I mean, it was more about the person, less about the sport itself.
Right.
Even what's that one with Sandra Bullock and stuff? Blindside or whatever.
Yeah. Blindside.
That was more about his story, what he had to go through, as opposed to him being a good football player and what happened, in the sport itself. Right. So Major League, that era to me is the sports movie era to watch, because that is when you got excited about the game, because you got to learn, it made you like, Kevin said, it's something that you felt like you were part of the team, like you rooted for the team and what they were going through, and you don't get that anymore, sadly.
Right. No. All right. Well, moving on from that, does this movie have any Funkos, Mikey, the Funko guy?
Oh yes. So let's talk about Funko. So this movie only has a few, because again, it is a movie that is, I guess, a classic baseball movie that they took with two characters. So they went with Jake Taylor and Ricky Vaughn, of course, pitcher-catcher duo. And then they came out with a chase version. So they ended up putting one where he is wearing the black horn-rimmed glasses with the skull and crossbones in the middle. Which, nice. As everybody knows, that is kind of what made Ricky Vaughn Wild Thing. He couldn't see, that couldn't see the signs, couldn't see the catcher, so they gave him red glasses, and it helped. But the red glasses was definitely not Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn. No. So he got the name, picked out the glasses as you see, the horn rim with the skull and crossbones, and that really became who he was, and that defined his character towards the end. And it actually became him unhittable. He was a very good pitcher at that point. Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank goodness for the mute button, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and.
So this is the. There's your two on the back, just to kind of show you the common versions.
Okay.
Jake Taylor and Ricky Vaughn.
Cool. So let's go ahead and rate this movie out of 1 to 10. Sure. Bebo, go ahead. How would you rate this movie from 1 to 10?
With, watching it back in the day, I would have given it a little higher marks, but, given today and, if the movie holds up, is it something I can still watch? Is it something that I can sit there and, like, if the TV's on and I'm flipping through channels and that comes up, is it something that I would be willing to just sit there and start watching regardless of where it is? I would, yes. So, for me, I'd probably give it about an 8 out of 10. It's very quotable. It's a good movie. For someone who grew up with it, to me, it still holds my attention whenever it's on. I still like watching it. So I'd say 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. How about you, Mikey?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Bevo. So Bevo has a good point. It is still a watchable movie, but I think it's more of a watchable movie if you're from that era. So my rating would be more of a 7 out of 10, just because I think if our generation does not see the movie, it's going to be lost and forgotten. It's going to be one of those movies to where it's another baseball movie, but it really didn't hold up. Well, there was tons of baseball movies in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
With Bull Durham coming out and Field of Dreams, and so there's those type movies overshadowed some of the other baseball movies. So you'll remember those movies, but you forget about Major League, because Major League was a comedic baseball movie, and that's why I liked it. You know, growing up and playing Little League baseball, and then in high school, you know, we quoted that baseball movie all the time when I played high school baseball. So it's one of those to where my kids, if I don't sit them down and watch it, they'll never know that it came out. So that's why I say it's a 7 out of 10. It still has comedic value. The storyline is there to where that you come from zero to hero with Ricky Vaughn, and then with the team coming from worst to first type storyline, and then you have the love angle with Jake Taylor and Lynn. I think it still holds water, and you could turn it on and leave it on, and you know, do what you have to do around the house, no matter if it's 10 minutes into the movie or the last 10 minutes. You would stop and sit there and watch it for the last 10 minutes, and then move on. It still has that sustainability for me, just because that's our generation, and we had a lot of I'm trying to think of the word, more of a reference to it.
Nostalgia to it.
Yeah, you know, because I played baseball, so I watched all the baseball movies. So I still have that reference with it, and I enjoy it. So I would still sit down and watch it to this day. But newer generation, I don't think they would sit down and watch it as much. I think they're just into something completely different now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it more of an 8. I'm going to give it a little bit higher than you guys, mainly because I feel that as a movie itself, no matter what generation it's in, you still have the comedic value, you still have the drama, you still have the love interest storyline. It builds a great crescendo into the final game, basically, to the end of the movie. You start knowing these characters as people, then you start knowing the team as a whole, and then it finally comes together at the end to where you know, they win the game, everything's happy, but it just builds. It just completely keeps building and building and building, in my opinion. And it has a great soundtrack. When they play Wild Thing, I think of this movie. You're right about the generations, though. There are some baseball rules and stuff like that get lost in this movie because the game is advanced. But at the same time, just as a movie itself, not making it a sports movie, not making it a romantic story, but just as a movie, I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah.
I think this does it for this episode of the Back to the Future review. So for Bebo, Mikey the Freak, I am the Bearded Geek, saying thank you for watching.